Hello, Pod Smashers of the Internet, and welcome to another episode of
80-Bit Podsmash,
Where Gaming Goes to Grab a Beer. We are your hosts,
Penguin and Termite. I'm Penguin.
I am Termite, and we are a weekly video game podcast smashing together topics that you care about with video games.
Smash!
Dude, that was a good Falcon Punch.
Thank you.
Smash.
Falcon Punch!
So, we have actually some very special beverages again with us tonight. We're going to talk about... Do you want to do the beer, or do you want to do the other thing first?
Well, we are finishing off our Buffalo Trace that we bought while I was on a diet. So we're going to finish that off right now.
We're going to shoot it.
Cheers.
Ooh, that was good.
That was better than our normal take.
So that was the last of our Buffalo Trace. That was not enough to make a full drink.
I don't know how I feel about shooting it, though. It's nice
yeah?
to sip. It's not bad. It's just like...
Yeah, all of it at once.
All of it at once, and it's really good. And I'm like, man, I almost would have preferred to just sip that and take it over time. I have a little bit left.
Like I said, it wasn't enough to make a full drink, so I decided it'd be fun to just split it in half and take half a shot of each. So there's that.
My diet is over, so on top of that, we're also drinking.
We are drinking Triple Crossings Nectar and Knife Double IPA. And there's a reason behind this. We, 80-Bit Podsmash, were represented at Triple Crossing with an awesome new retro video game store that's opening up. Triple Crossing is in Richmond, Virginia. They have two locations. We went to the Fulton location. The new game store is called Dawnstar Games, and they had a pop-up down there with a video game tournament. Smash Bros. Was what was played.
Nice.
And they also had some retro games for sale, and they had some TVs set up with some retro systems to play. I saw a PlayStation, a GameCube, and a Super Nintendo. Dabbled in some retro video games. I met some awesome people. So shout out to the owners and managers of Dawnstar Games. Specifically, I talked at length with Megan and Andrew. You'll know who you are if you listen to us.
Yeah.
Andrew runs a record store, which I cannot remember the name of. That is also his joint effort to interact with Richmond over vinyl records and soundtracks. He's super interested in video game soundtracks, so you might be hearing more about him more on our show.
Yeah.
So thank you,
talk to you.
Triple Crossing, for hosting the event. Thank you, Dawnstar Games, for hosting a tournament and letting me come talk to you about our podcast. And if you hear us, give us a shout out on social media platforms.
Yeah, and for our listeners, if you're down in Richmond, go check them out, buy some games.
They are in Scott's Addition, and I don't know their address, but they are on Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah, Google it.
Dawnstar.
Yeah, sorry I didn't get to meet you guys. I had a work thing preventing me from going down there, but it sounds like Termite had an awesome time.
It was amazing.
And I'm looking forward to talking to you guys about collaborating in the future and stuff. So we might be down there, hopefully. Might be down there soon.
Yeah, their grand opening is this weekend.
Yeah, definitely go check it out.
We have a previous episode of our podcast that talks about our dream, hypothetical dream of wanting to own a game store. We also interviewed David Kalin from Game Over Video Games, so it's two different episodes. We talk about owning and running a store.
Yeah.
Dawnstar Games seems to have the character that we adore the most, the passion for retro games, the not, I'm just going to go make a bunch of money kind of mentality, but actually caring and having a passion about what you're selling.
Engaging with their community, and yeah, it's awesome.
And the inclusive atmosphere that was present at Triple Crossing at the time was apparent. So thank you for hosting us and letting us come down and play your games.
Yep. You know what we forgot to do in our intro?
What did we forget to do?
We forgot to say what we were talking about today.
We are going to be talking about in-game economics.
In-game economies, yeah. So it's a little bit different. A few, 30 or some episodes ago, we talked about virtual currencies. And so it's similar to that, but the currency episode was focusing more on the way that currencies have changed in video games. We're actually going to be kind of taking a zoom out approach and talking about how economies work in video games and how virtual economies in general work and why they're interesting, why they're an interesting topic of
conversation. Are they interesting? I'm just kidding. They are. Yes.
I think they are. I am not. I took economics in college and I hated it. Macroeconomics. It was so boring. The teacher was an interesting person and made it as interesting as she could, but I hated it. Maybe it was just the time of life I was in, and maybe now that I'm making money with a job and have a 401k and
you care about these things now because they matter to you.
Care about them more, but yeah, I've recently found virtual economies to be really fascinating how they work. So we'll get all into that, but before we get into our main topic, we've got several segments, and first segment we like to start off in is talking about
a bit of news,
talking about what's going on, and in contrast to the last few weeks, Suddenly, it's been a very news-heavy week, and that's
Yes.
partially because Gamescom is this week. So
It is.
Why don't you talk about all the happenings and goings-on?
Gamescom is a giant kind of E3 expo. It's growing in popularity in Germany, I believe.
Right,
I don't remember what city it is because I don't know. I don't remember. Anyway, there were lots of updates. There was a keynote speech by Jeff Keighley, who hosts the Video Game Awards. He is awesome. He's a great host. There was, I don't even remember what the name of the keynote speech was, but there was a lot of updates on AA games and B games. Finally, THQ Nordic is just like hit after hit after hit. You know, they've announced they have like 80 some games in development right now, so we got to see some of those. I'm not going to list them all out because you might fall asleep. There's a lot of titles.
Yeah.
And without having some sort of visual, tactile kind of attachment to it's just a list of titles, and it's not going to help anyone. So a bunch of new games were there. If you're interested at all, go on YouTube and find the Gamescom information. You'll see all the trailers. There were some updates for some big games. Predator Hunting Grounds is a PS4 exclusive that looks pretty sweet. It's an asynchronous multiplayer game where one person plays as a predator against a bunch of Marines. It's the same studio that made Friday the 13th,
Nice.
which did really well.
It sounds like
we finally got some real gameplay footage from that. There was a giant chunk of updates about Death Stranding. If you care about Death Stranding and you are as confused as the rest of the internet is about what it is, there's finally clarity. We have 2 new characters, and we have the entire story kind of laid out as to what the goal of the main character, Sam, is doing, why he's running around in the wilderness with a ladder and a baby. And
ladder and a baby.
Yeah, it's as nuts as it sounds, but there's finally some like answers. And I'm actually more excited about playing Death Stranding now than I was before, but not enough to pre-order it
I was
yet.
thinking about it because I was thinking about it today too, and I was like, Death Stranding is the only new IP that I have plans to play this year, I think. So like the rest of the year is Borderlands, World of Warcraft, maybe Pokemon, and Death Stranding. So that's 3 existing IPs. And then I guess the only brand new IP that I played this year, but it wasn't a game from this year, was Monster Hunter.
Right.
No, but that's it. Monster Hunter. Monster Hunter is an existing IP. So
right.
Yeah, like everything else, Resident Evil, Devil May Cry.
Yep. They're all sequels.
Yep. Yeah, I guess I played Octopath, and that was a new.
That was last year,
brand
though.
New IP. Yeah, it
was released last year.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so I was like, I'm looking forward to Death Stranding because I'm like, yeah, it's
something
game.
new.
It's something new. Yeah, I'm very excited about it. So, I need to check out. I haven't seen all the footage and all that stuff. Yeah, I haven't been paying as close attention to Gamescom as I thought I was going to be. So, whatever.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Lots of stuff was there. Nintendo even showed up and showed a whole lot of extra footage of Link's Awakening, which got me that much more excited to play it. So that's really sweet.
Cool. Well, aside from Gamescom, what else has been going on?
What happened in the middle of the Gamescom live keynote speech was Sony purchased Insomniac Games.
Wait, the deal went through like
while he was
then?
talking,
That's
and he
crazy.
announced it. Like he was like,
He just came right
between trailers, he was like, "Oh, hey, by the way, this just happened."
Yeah,
like it was
so-
just announced that Sony purchased Insomniac
Which
Games.
is crazy because we did a developer profile on Insomniac, and they like prided themselves on being like independent and able to do what they wanted. So that must have been a really big paycheck.
Yeah,
it must have been a really big buyout.
Mm-hmm.
Sony, and I don't want to spend a ton of time talking about this, but Sony has been drinking from the hubris fountain recently.
Yeah,
as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, they have.
On top of Spider-Man, not Spider-Man, but on top of Insomniac's purchase, they basically had been having a renegotiation with Disney/Marvel regarding the movies, the Spider-Man movie rights.
Right. And Spider-Man is a character in them.
Yeah, and so for those who don't know, Sony and Disney made an agreement where Disney would take 5% of the profits from Sony's Spider-Man movies, and in return, they would be involved in the creative process, lend characters such as Tony Stark and Nick Fury, and basically make the Spider-Man movies good. And then, of course, in return, Spider-Man would appear in the MCU movies. So that's why we've gotten Spider-Man in Civil War, the 2 Infinity War movies, and then also, other
Tony
characters.
Stark is in both Spider-Man movies.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's part of the greater Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah, so it's all tied in. Like, you can't... It's hard to imagine a Tom Holland Spider-Man movie without the MCU at this point.
Right.
Because they're so tied together and have been for the past, 3 years. That said, they came to a standstill negotiations, and Sony decided to pull Spider-Man... They pulled the entire deal. So now... Spider-Man will no longer, Tom Holland's Spider-Man will no longer be in the MCU, and no MCU characters will be in Spider-Man movies going forward. I am disappointed because the Fox deal just went through. So for the first time ever, all the Marvel characters had been in-house, and we were going to possibly get Fantastic Four and X-Men and Spider-Man all home with Marvel.
Oh, I know.
And movies,
and my
and
dream
now
of Deadpool, X-Men, and Spider-Man all in one.
All in one,
yeah.
The Avengers, Deadpool, and Spider-Man would have been great. But, yeah, so
reportedly, Disney wanted a 50-50 split.
Yeah, so what they wanted to up there. But, so the deal... It sounds really bad that Disney wanted to go from 5% to 50%. They wanted 10 times the amount of profits that they originally had. But it's not as bad as it sounds because Disney was going to do 50-50 split on everything, including merchandising. Because right now, as the deal exists, Disney gets everything in regards to the merchandise. So they said, we want 5% of the movie profits and all the merchandising.
Mm-hmm.
Now they were going to go 50-50 on both merch and the movie.
Yeah, so Disney's asking
profit.
for a lot more now.
They are asking for a lot more, yes, but it's not that bad because they're also willing to split the merchandise with Sony. They weren't splitting. Disney was taking everything.
Right.
So
yeah, I wish I could do the math on those numbers.
Right, yeah, there's so many numbers there. So it's not. So their deal wasn't that bad. It was asking for more, but when you think about it, I would rather my movie make $100 million and split that with, Disney a 50-50 split than the movie make $1 million.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I still think it's a bad deal. I think because Sony just proven that they can't make Spider-Man movies by themselves. And they think they have the winning formula now, but without Nick Fury, without Tony Stark, without any of the MCU characters, it's going to be hard. The only thing they have going for them is Tom Holland, and he's great, but can he carry a Spider-Man movie by himself?
I think he could.
I think he can.
With the right writers, directors behind him.
Yeah, but
which is also an issue if you don't have
But
Disney
now
Marvel
the problem
behind him.
is they're like cutting it halfway off. So what, are they just going to not mention Tony Stark? Because they're not going to be able to mention Tony Stark.
Yeah.
Are they just going to pretend that didn't happen? It's going to be awkward and weird, and I don't think it's going to be successful. I think they're going to lose money. I think that Spider-Man, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, the last Andrew Garfield one, made so little money.
Right.
And had such a bad taste in people's mouths that people are just going to not see it out of principle. Not even out of principle, not even out a boycott Sony. They're just going to not see it because they're like, oh, well, it's not part of the MCU anymore, so I don't care.
Funny you mentioned boycott Sony, because I tweeted about this. So Insomniac Games makes Spider-Man for PlayStation 4. That's why we linked these stories together. So Spider-Man for PlayStation 4 is the single best selling superhero video game of all time. Yeah. It outranked everything else. Yeah. And it matters because Spider-Man is a PlayStation 4 exclusive. Yeah. Previous superhero video games were cross-platform. Not cross-platform, but third-party, available on all platforms. And that's multiple consoles and PC. So the fact that Spider-Man sold that much on the PlayStation, Sony, I don't think it's a coincidence that this happened at the same time.
But I'm worried, though, because I looked this up because I was curious, and it's not a concrete thing. What is concrete is Marvel still owns video game rights to Spider-Man. So technically Disney still owns video game rights to Spider-Man. Okay. And they could, I'm not saying they will, but they could pull those from Sony as a result of this bad blood. So
and then they couldn't make any more Spider-Man games.
Insomniac could not make another Spider-Man game, correct?
Right, Spider-Man 2.
Though, and one of the rumors is that the Spider-Man game rights were part of this deal, part of this sharing.
Oh, interesting.
So that Disney gave them.
It is all linked together.
It is all linked together. It's so, I mean, Insomniac is still a big win a big get for Sony.
Oh,
Don't get me wrong.
I mean, Ratchet and Clank.
Yeah, exactly. They can make there's still plenty of games they can make. But I'm interested to know what the future of the Spider-Man PS4 sequel is in lieu of this fallout between Disney and Sony.
So there was one last Sony quote. A Sony spokesperson said in an official statement, I'm going to read it. Much of today's news about Spider-Man has mischaracterized recent discussions about Kevin Feige's involvement in the franchise.
Feige, but go ahead.
Feige's involvement in the franchise. We are disappointed, but respect Disney's decision not to have him continue as a lead producer of our next live-action Spider-Man film.
Yeah, so it sounds like they're like, hey, part of our deal is that Feige is going to be involved, and Disney was like, no, we'll still be involved, but we're pulling Feige because we want him to focus on other things. That's what it sounds like to me. Nevertheless, I think that I would be interested to see if Disney's going to release a statement. You know what I mean?
That's what I want to know.
Sony is Sony is of course, covering their back. So, hey, we want everybody to still see our movies and buy our stuff. So they're, of course, giving the PR statement. I'm wondering what Disney's point of view is. But either way, it sounds like it just didn't It sounds like it's just stupid. I mean, granted, I know that like Sony doesn't owe me anything as a viewer, but I just still think it's I am disappointed. But like, yeah, they don't owe me anything. I just think it's a dumb business decision. I think they're
it's
making
a genius business decision for Sony. So the idea, and this is highlighted on our Facebook wall too, was that
I said I didn't want to talk about this. Right?
I know, but like, so Spider-Man made $1 billion, right? And Disney gets 5% of that, right? Is that what you said? Disney gets the 5% cut?
Disney got the 5% cut.
So they got 5% of $1 billion.
Mm-hmm.
So Sony had to give up that money.
Yes.
Whatever the math is, 5% of $1 billion is what, 500 million?
Sure.
Or $20 million. $20 million? That can't be right. I don't know the math.
I'm not a math.
So Sony's like, hey, why do we stop giving Disney money, make a movie that makes less than $1 billion, but keep 100% of the profits for ourselves? That's their mentality.
If people go see it, that entire plan is contingent on people being willing to go see a Spider-Man movie that's not part of the MCU.
Maybe.
And
they have a whole new producer wing. Remember we talked about that a couple episodes ago. They're going to make a whole new line of video game movies.
I am skeptical of that. And again, it maybe people go see the first one, but if it's a bad movie, people aren't going to go see the second one. They proved that with Spider-Man, The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2.
Right.
People went to go see the Andrew Garfield, the first one. They didn't go see the second one.
But the precedent hasn't been set at
People
that point.
are going to be...
Now it has.
It has been... The precedent that they've been set is...
The first
Tom Holland works really good as Spider-Man when he's involved with other characters in the MCU.
But okay, so we know Venom was like a mediocre film, right?
Venom tanked all things
made money.
Considers.
It was profitable.
But its reputation, people aren't going to go see Venom 2.
So Venom 2 comes out with Tom Holland as Spider-Man in it. I'm in. Sign me up,
right.
day one.
All right, that's
that's
you.
Amazing.
That's one person, with a particularly optimistic person. Right? They'll make money. They're just not going to long-term
And then they make Spider-Man 2,
money.
the video game, with Venom in it. Now you have a movie tie-in.
I'm going to cut like 90% of this entire conversation, so you better just move on. We're moving on.
I'm all about it.
We're moving on.
I'm on Sony. I'm on Team Sony on this one.
Termite and Penguin disagree on this one. You're on Team Sony no matter what they do. Sony could like burn a church to the ground and you'd be like, so when's the game coming out?
I'm just saying Sony's making smart business moves. That's all I'm saying.
No, I disagree, but that's fine. Go on. What's next?
So, GameStop is hurting badly. Their stock has been plummeting. It's not a secret. They've lost $700 and some million over last year to year. And it's just been announced that GameStop is laying off 100 employees at the corporate level. And with that are nearly half of Game Informer's staff. So Game Informer magazine is owned by GameStop. So when you have your GameStop Pro Rewards membership, you get the subscription to the magazine. They say for free, but you're really kind of paying for the subscription to the magazine. They're linked. Right. They're linked together. And so the publication is now gutted. Half those people are gone. And what does that mean for the future of the magazine? What does that mean for the future of GameStop? They're downsizing. We know they're in trouble.
Yeah.
They've already had statements released saying they were going to completely rework their stores to give consumers more of a experience with games. We don't know what that looks like because it's very ambiguous, but I just thought it was it's interesting. GameStop, where are you going to buy your games from after GameStop's gone? Is it really the end? Is this it?
I'm gonna just buy games from Amazon. I guess that if you want to go buy a game at a brick and mortar store, there's still the big boxes like Best Buy and Walmart. Those are gonna be the best place to buy games on the fly, and it makes sense because very few. How do I put this? Very few like nationwide chains can exist anymore, just doing one thing.
Mm-hmm.
So a store that sells furniture and groceries on top of video games is going to probably be able to sustain itself better than a game that just sells, or a store that just sells video games.
Right.
I like GameStop. I'm like, I don't use GameStop anyways, so there's enough of a, like, I only use GameStop, like, last case scenario, like if I can't get something on Amazon or want something immediately.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I can just go to Best Buy or Walmart for that if I need to.
But those used games so cheap.
Yeah, that's
Divinity
fair.
Sin.
I see what you mean.
I'm sorry, Divinity Original Sin 2 was
true. Yeah,
less than $20.
$20. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So a quote from GameStop to Kotaku in an article that's posted, I will probably link off to it. As part of the previously announced GameStop Reboot initiative to transform our business for the future and improve our financial performance, we can confirm a workforce reduction was implemented, impacting more than 120 corporate staff positions, representing approximately 14% of our total associate base at our company headquarters, as well as some other offices, a GameStop spokesperson said. While these changes are difficult, they were necessary to reduce costs and better align the organization with our efforts to optimize the business to meet our future objectives and success factors. And he goes on like, we recognize it's difficult and we're sad, thoughts, prayers, etc. They didn't actually say that. That was me editorializing. But essentially, that's like all corporate office positions. Like those are expensive positions. That's leadership. That's up high up. And the GameStop story is more grim and more grim. We know digital sales are increasing more and more.
Yep.
It's harder to run a brick and mortar store. There's less traffic in their stores.
Yeah, it's not looking good for them.
There's already an initiative to get rid of the membership entirely with the 10% discount on used games and replace that with something else. That hasn't been confirmed as far as what concrete plans they are, but they're looking at even gutting that. So who knows what's left? Who knows what the future of GameStop is? It's going to be a weird place in the world if this is where Penguin and Termite open their video game store. We buy all of their
that's the
liquidized...
funny things is that video game stores, like mom and pop stores, are kind of coming back because what they offer are experiences.
Yeah.
And they offer sort of a community to go to. So like Dawnstar is going to do great in this climate, whereas opposed to GameStop, like, is dying because it's that sort of soulless corporate machine place, but it's a dying type of industry when you've got digital sales and then also online stores that are like 99% more convenient than dealing with GameStop. So they just didn't adapt. It's another sort of business that failed to adapt, and we're out of time for news.
Yes.
So we're gonna move on. We're gonna have to cut one of our other segments because we've talked for too much. So in this case, I think we're gonna go ahead and cut favorite things.
I still have to give another shout out to another supporter.
Shout out real quick then. That's in place of favorite things. Termite's giving one single shout out.
Yes. Chris Sneed over at Fredericksburg Console Repair Mods. I think that's his name. Fredericksburg Console Mods is definitely his name on Facebook. He fixed my Virtual Boy, and he did a great job. He was super knowledgeable in all things console repairs. He does recapping, which is replacing the capacitors on things like a Sega Saturn. He also tested my Saturn, verified that it worked, and he verified my Xbox 360 is indeed a Red Ring of Death dead console. So I was kind of excited about it because I have 4 Xboxes and I never had a Red Ring. Nice. So that was pretty sweet. So shout out to you, Chris. I hope anyone in the Fredericksburg area would hit him up for their console repairs. He's super easy to work with, and he is awesome.
Okay,
so
now it's time for a really quick DLC. DLC stands for downloadable content, and it is a segment of our podcast where these two Dans come up with a little conversation that you normally wouldn't have about video games. So, since we're talking about in-game economies, we're going to be talking a lot about like auction houses, eBay-style auction houses. So this is going to be a new kind of game that I'm coming up with called Penguin and Termite's Auction House. So we are using our magical machine here. We should get some kind of sound effect here, like a little dilly 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 sound. I don't know, some kind of exactly. Ring. We're using our magic, our Penguin and Termite magic. We are reaching into a video game world, and we're going to grab items from this video game world, and we're going to talk about how much we would pay if those items existed in the real world. So come up with, I don't know, like 3 items from any video game, any item from any video game.
So, example, I would spend $5 out of my wallet to reach into Mario and pull out a mushroom.
No, I'm saying we use our magic to reach in and grab a mushroom, and then how much, if you were a buyer, I guess, then put yourself in the shoes of a buyer, how much would you pay for that mushroom?
$5.
Okay, yeah. That's,
okay. I was making sure I got it right.
Yes,
and it sounds like I have it right. Okay.
So I'm going to start with the item. I'm going to say I've used our Penguin and Termite machine, and I've reached in and grabbed the Master Sword.
Ooh, you're thinking along my lines.
Master Sword from Ocarina of Time with the ability to travel through time if you put it in the right spot. Whatever the equivalent of the Temple of Time is in the real
Israel.
world. Yeah.
The temple in Israel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you shove it there, you could go 7 years into the future.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Does it look exactly
like... It looks like it.
Like the N64 model. The polygons and
It would be like the real like the real life equivalent.
Okay.
So it would look like
okay.
it would look like an actual.
Gotcha.
But yeah,
So that matters because if you pull out a pixel art sword, it's like Minecraft.
yeah. No. It the part of the magic is it looks
As if it were real life.
as if it were real life. Yes,
Like
it looks as
legitimately.
real to us as it would look to Link in Link's
Okay.
world. Yes.
Sweet. No, that would be.
How much did you pay for it?
It'd be like, oh man, that's almost priceless. Like that's almost.
Would you sell your house for it? Like, would you take
Well,
another mortgage out on your house?
If it was, oh man, maybe.
I guess just like you're a curator, how much would you price it at? Like, what would you make
Ooh,
someone
that's
else
a better
pay?
one.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a better question.
Yeah, because like selling mortgage,
right.
family.
How much would you?
implications,
How
right.
much would you sell it for? That's probably better.
Oh, it would be way up there at like a priceless artifact. So
you're
it
talking
would be
like-
like millions of dollars.
like however much the Mona Lisa is.
yeah, like way
like-
up there,
like-
super unique.
Probably like $500 million, somewhere around that.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Mhm.
All right. Hit me with another item.
All right, I'm going to reach into the 80-bit Podsmash magic world and pull out the Ultima weapon from Final Fantasy VII.
We're both going swords.
Yeah,
here.
well, that's the first thing I thought of, and then you said Master Sword. I was like, oh, you're kind of
What can
thinking
the
along.
Ultima weapon do?
It's Cloud's strongest weapon in the game.
So it's just a really strong sword.
It's ridiculously powerful,
Okay.
and it's Cloud's specific weapon.
I mean-
no one else can wield.
I would sell. No one can wield it. Okay, then.
Well, I guess you could.
I would
but,
pro-
in the game world, no one else in Final Fantasy VII
Yeah,
wields
yeah.
this weapon.
I'd say I'd sell it for. I wouldn't sell it for quite as much as the Master Sword.
Mhm.
I'd price it at like $10 million.
Okay.
Yeah, because like it doesn't do anything other
It
than
doesn't
it's a
make
really
you time travel.
powerful sword,
Right.
and like it doesn't matter how powerful a sword is if someone shoots me. You know what I
Right.
mean? So like I can't sell it to a military. It's just a really strong sword.
Mhm.
So
It
yeah,
could deflect
$10 million.
bullets, though, I bet.
Yeah, I'm sure it deflect bullets, but
Mhm.
like you also have to have the reflexes to deflect
Right.
bullets. It's not like it just sits there and bullets magically warp around it.
Yeah.
But
Maybe
so,
it's got a magnetic field.
maybe
Who
we
knows?
don't know that for sure. We'll do one more each. I'm gonna pull into my little portal, and I'm gonna pull out the fire flower from Mario.
Ooh,
Mario 3.
that's fun.
It,
Arson.
like lights your clothes up and lets you shoot fireballs.
Yeah, you can commit arson for free.
Totally.
Well, how much you want to pay?
I guess no, because like the fireballs, like they do in the game, they just bounce off of stone and brick and mortar, and they don't set things on fire in the game. So all they do is like make turtles flip upside down, and really you just use it to troll, like throw fireballs at your friends, and then
They
make
just
them,
troll-
like, make them trip and
like-
stuff like that.
Like
Yeah.
Twitch, just like
Oh, gosh,
geez.
yeah. Oh my gosh! Like, oh, that's weird. Oh, it feels strange. Yeah,
so it can't really damage anyone, but you have cool clothes.
yeah. It makes your clothes light up, and
That's pretty sweet.
I suppose you're like a little bit like you can't get hurt as badly. Like you can still get hurt, but you can like every time you get hit once, you have to get hit twice. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
so you're like a little bit more durable.
I would price that at like 500,000.
Okay, yeah,
It's kind of a fun gimmick.
good. Yeah,
You hit it up, you look cool for a minute, and then you troll your
some
friends,
fireballs,
but
yeah, troll
you're not
your
going to
friends.
use it a lot, and it's not
Yeah.
going to have a whole lot of value.
okay, all right.
My last weapon.
Does it
Maybe.
have to be a
It might-
weapon? Doesn't
no,
have to be
it
a
might
weapon.
not be.
No, okay.
Actually, I'm going to reach into the portal, and I'm going to pull out the portal gun
Nice. That's a
that
good one.
actually makes the two
Yes.
blue and orange portals.
Oh my gosh,
that
that
can
one's-
create world devastation and planetary. Yes, you can go to the moon.
Yeah, that's
Like,
one of the that's one that's up there with the Master Sword. Yeah,
Yeah, that's really
I
legendary.
think I would. Yeah, I would say $200 to $600 million.
Yeah, it would be a
Yeah,
lot.
it'd be a
Tesla
lot.
would probably buy it.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to like, who would you sell it to? I
Yeah.
would sell it to Elon Musk. For that
Yeah,
much
absolutely.
money. Yeah,
you want to
for
go to the
sure.
moon now and do some tests?
Yeah.
Just make a portal.
Let's do it. Yeah, bloop, bloop.
Done.
Could you do it to Mars? Like if you lined it up right?
Oh, I bet that he would find a way to do it.
Probably,
Bounce
yeah.
the signal
Mhm.
off of
Or like
satellites and stuff.
mhm,
Yeah.
Mhm. It'd be awesome.
Yep.
All right, that's DLC.
Ming.
So now we can go to our main topic,
DLC.
which is we're talking about in-game economies or in-game economics is what how Termite listed it in the notes. So that's only
Was that my note?
That's only due to the fact that he beat me to jotting down the notes today. I would have said in-game or virtual economies. Anyway, so let's start. What is a virtual economy? Why is it interesting to talk about? And how does it compare to real-world economies?
Real world economies are our money systems, right? Our financial
Right,
systems.
yeah.
They're bound by, well, it used to be gold. Don't know what it's bound by now, but there's things like interest rates, and everything's affected from the price of your house to the loans that you get, and your life is
Yeah.
gimped, gripped, and attached to this idea of an economy, and
Yeah.
we're speaking as North American people, like the
Right.
global economy is different.
It doesn't matter what your economic system is.
Right.
One way or another, an economy is simply like the way that we like interact with each other's
exchange goods.
goods and services.
Yep.
I would say, I mean, the very basic bottom line. I think that I think of any student who is like, I don't know, grade 11 or higher could like sum up the very basic idea of what a economy is it basically it's supply and demand. Like, it is the first economy was formed when Tuk Tuk the caveman said, I have rabbit, and the Glug Glug said, I have a really sharp rock, and Tuk Tuk said, I will trade you my dead rabbit for food for your sharp rock, and they made the exchange. That was when.
And then the other
were
person
formed.
said, if you teach a man to fish.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's just the exchange of goods and services,
Yep.
right? So, I mean, it could be as simple as a barter economy, or it could be a crazy system involving the stock markets and exchanges and all that. But
and interest rates.
but at the end of the day, all of those things are just simply supply and demand.
Yep.
So that's what we're mostly going to be talking about: supply and demand, and how it applies to how.
So
it applies
virtual
to video
economies
games.
are that.
Yeah,
How they're in video games.
Exactly. I mean, it can,
they're there.
and a virtual economy can be something beyond a video game, like cryptocurrencies and stuff like that. And we talked about those a little bit in our currency episode. But yeah, I mean, in video games, some of these games have their own economies, their own thriving economies. We'll talk a little bit about single player game economies, but we'll mostly be talking about multiplayer game economies, because just like real economies, it's happening person to person. Just like in real world economies, this is comparing them at this point, just like in real world economies, someone has a need and someone else comes and says, I will fulfill that need if you give me something in exchange. So that is what virtual economies are, except in the difference is, whereas in real economies, there's some physical exchange happening, whether it's like I'm mowing your lawn, so I'm doing physical labor for you, and you're paying me for my
time and
labor. My time and my skill in that regards, or if we're exchanging and trading physical objects, those are, that's what almost all real world economies are doing, is just exchanging physical objects. We're just dropping stuff all over the place today on this table. The difference is that in video games, it's within a game. It's all just digital numbers. It's just I'm
going to exchange this piece of gear
exactly
for
some
some in-game currency material to craft a different type of gear.
It doesn't exist. It doesn't actually physically exist. The only thing I can like compare it to when people like scoff at that idea is like, technically, like, music doesn't exist either. It only exists inside of our heads. Same with books or stories, that for that matter. Like, a book is just a bunch of scratches of ink on a piece of paper.
But it's the ideas that convey.
Exactly. It's the story. It's what happens in your imagination that is the actual thing of value.
Right.
Music is the same thing. It's just a bunch of vibrations. And digital music is even more so. Like, at least with a CD, I'm like getting an actual physical thing. But like a CD is just a digital file that, like, by all intents and purposes, could be, I have no idea how the rights work on it, so someone could just yank it from my
computer. Or you go to a
computer.
show and you can't. It's not a thing you touch at all. You're at a concert.
So the value is just
you're
what
consuming the entertainment.
Exactly. The value is what people give it. So the value of these pieces of gear or this really rare item or whatever, the value is just simply what the people give it. And usually it's because they take time and effort and skill to get. Therefore, the players consider them valuable, because to just, quote, pay for them.
So, virtual economy.
Yep. Exactly, economy. Yay!
Hey,
so we
how
have an
about
economy.
that?
Exactly. Cool. So that's a good starting point. What do virtual economies look like in single player games?
Single player games. Ever played a Final Fantasy or a Japanese RPG?
Yep.
They have in-game gil or coin or whatever they want to call it, where usually at the end of every battle you collect some money, and you can take that money and take it to a town, and you can buy items to heal your party or buff your party with stronger gear and replacements.
Yeah, forcing you to make choices. Do I want to spend my money on these potions so that I am more successful in my next combats? Or do I want to spend it on a new sword so I can kill the enemy faster and not have to worry about healing?
And then there's stronger fights that require you to use items to win. And then so you're paying money to win a fight to get more money. And then you're using the profits to buy gear to buff your party. And it's all up to you how you want to manage it. But it's just you versus the computer.
Right.
Like, it's all about the house so to speak, quote unquote, the house, which is like if you go to casino, you have the casino's the house, right? So it's you versus the house. There's no one else involved. It's if you want to grind for endless hours and become a millionaire, you can totally do that because in Final Fantasies or in Japanese RPGs, it's guaranteed the drop rate for money is there and it's infinite. There's an infinite supply of money and it comes out at an X rate, so you can just spend all the time you want. It's completely up to you as a player to have full agency over your time to collect money.
Yeah, and as we talked about in our currency episode, though, the kind of the difference with a single player game is ultimately at the end of the day, the currencies and economies inside of single player games are more just a time gating mechanic.
Right, from the developer perspective or a game design perspective, it's their way to tell the player how slow or fast they can pass through this area.
Exactly. And in another way, it's like a way of forcing them to make choices. But like, you can't then take the money you earn and like turn it into something. Whereas like, if I go to a casino, I could then take the money that I won gambling and like go buy a car or whatever with it. Like I can go turn it into a tangible benefit. In single player games, you can't really do that. Like you can buy more items and stuff, and maybe if the game is designed with some super rare things that other players can't get, you could get those and maybe show them off to your friends, but you don't get any necessarily benefit other than your own satisfaction.
And because the pool of money is endless, because you just keep spending more time, there's no cap, so it's really just how much time you spend, and it's really like, if you want to buy the best thing in the game, it might require your time, and that's it.
Yep,
there's no like.
So it really is just like a way
imposing
to
force. It's just padding and gating.
Yeah. Whereas in multiplayer games, especially some of these, we're going to be focusing mostly on MMORPGs. I'm going to be transparent here and say this is going to be another WoW heavy episode because that's the in-game economy that I'm most familiar with. But like, you can use it to you can turn around and take the gold you make, and yes, you can buy rare items, and yes, there are like gold sinks in the game where the developers literally put them in there just for the players who have a ton of gold. But you can turn that around, you can like actually like you can get players to do things for you, and like you can actually like pay people to do stuff. You can actually almost like in the same way that you would in real life, like you can actually get more tangible benefits out of it. And there's more to do with that money once you have it. So it's interesting. Yeah, it's a very interesting thing. So that's what we're going to be focusing on. We're going to be talking about what they look like in multiplayer games. So did you have another? So
yeah, the last single player idea before we jump into multiplayer was Pokemon, the original Red and Blue. What was unique about that was you only got money from fighting trainers or selling items. So the number of items you could find in the game were limited by however many items you can find in the game or buy from a store. If you buy it from a store, you sell it back, you get a loss. So you'll lose money.
So there's like a really finite. There's sort of
very finite.
There's a mini game of trying to manage like
of the money. Yeah,
the money.
And like how many Pokeballs can you buy to collect all of them?
It's like teaching you budgeting.
Yes,
it's like teaching budgeting. And
you have to be
kids.
very smart. And so I thought that was a unique example of how single player economies can work in the favor of game design. It's like they wanted you to value how much it costs to buy a Pokeball because they know you want to collect all 150. And they're kind of hard to find and kind of hard to collect. It costs money to go into the Safari Zone and get those Pokeballs and that stuff. So you had to manage your money. So I would never buy items in the original Pokemon games ever. Yeah. But you could. And if you couldn't beat the Elite Four at the very end of the game, but you could buy items, you could do that. I guess the only time you could ever grind for money was to refight the Elite Four over and over again. And that was at the very end game.
Right.
And so they put all of the attainable gold at the very end of the game so you could do that and maybe you can collect all then, but it really does gate you. It's like you can't even fathom collecting all of the Pokemon until you at least finish the story,
right?
So I just thought that was a unique game design, in-game economy. They wanted you to finish the game before you started collecting them, but it was still this two different approaches to Pokemon. Am I going to collect them all, or am I going to finish the story? Yeah.
And we talked a lot about a lot of these single player games, because specifically with currencies, because
like God of War is
and every
one. And there's a ton of different currencies in God of War. But when you get to the end of the game, you are flush with all of the currencies, and everything's pointless.
Yeah. So what we wanted to
we don't want that either. That's not good design.
Exactly. So what we wanted to do with this episode is focus more on multiplayer, because when you get multiple people together in the same room and then like give them something to strive for,
and give them the ability to exchange in-game items, not just the currency.
Exactly. Right. Then you suddenly have an economy, an actual economy. So
from people to people, it's kind of an entity in and of itself that's separate from the game design. It's like, I'm going to collect guns in Borderlands, and I'll help you beat the last boss for this legendary.
Yeah, I think if I were to compare it, like I would say that like with single player games, it's much more like the in-game economy is I wouldn't even call it an economy. I'd call it more resource management. It'd be the same as like me, going out into the woods and I'm going to survive. Like, I've got these resources. I can earn more resources by like increasing my skills and going out and doing stuff and going out and actually like investing time. But it's more just managing the resources I have to, like, I don't know, get a bunch of food and build a shelter, and like it's resource management. Whereas when you start having multiple, as soon as someone else comes into my little cabin and suddenly I have a tribe to deal with of people, then it's suddenly an economy.
It's an extra belly to feed.
Yeah, exactly. Then we're bartering. Then we're exchanging.
Maybe he or she is really good at fishing.
Yeah, I want you to go get the fish. I'm going to go like work on building the shelter and improving that. Yeah, exactly. And then suddenly we've engaged in an economy with one another. So
that's it. Yeah.
So when you have multiple people, suddenly you have an economy. So how do these virtual economies work? Like, what has to be in place in a game for there to be a virtual economy? And you kind of hit on it. First of all, you have to be able to trade items. You have to be able
to trade something other than the quote, like gold or the money, like literal money. You have to be able to trade items.
I mean, even just if you were just trade gold, because then you could like trade services with another, be like, hey, I'll pay you 50 gold or whatever or 50 currency to go to do this thing with me.
Which would only make sense if the game itself had a limit on how much gold or some way of the rate at which you would collect that gold, and
so developers have to like design games with limitations and goals, like things to strive for. So that's like part of the meta game. Yeah. But then there's also just the simple fact that you have to be able to trade stuff. You have to be able to trade something back and forth with each other. And as you hit on, ideally you can trade both currency and items. Right. Because then
the items can be their own currency.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm going to use WoW as an example. There has to be some means of facilitation. It could be trade directly to one another, which WoW has. You can go up and say right-click trade, and then give someone something and there's a whole trade window that you can like trade gold, or you can just trade it for nothing. But you can just hand someone something. There's also an actual in-game auction house. It's a whole interface that's designed where you post stuff and you say, it's like eBay. I want to put the bidding price, which is like starting at blank, and then it will be up for 12 hours and they can bid on it. Or you can just set, I just want, you buy it now. Like, I'm going to set a price where someone can just pay this and get it instantly.
But they have to use the in-game gold.
They do have to use the in-game gold, yes.
Which you get from a myriad of ways in the game.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So
that's kind of the endless currency that you just have to spend time to get.
Everybody gets a sort of baseline amount of gold. You get some gold from killing monsters. You get some gold from doing quests. So everyone's going to have a basic amount of gold. Right. And that's called raw gold. There are other ways you can get raw gold, but you can get raw gold, again, mostly it's from killing things, quests. There are some items that you can get that are not tradable. They're called soulbound in WoW, and you can vendor those. That's another term, vendoring, where you just sell it to the NPC for a base amount of gold. You sell it to the in-game characters for a basic amount of gold. Right. So,
and that's kind of like your character's bank account. Yeah, it's like I'm Termite in WoW, and I have 500,000 gold.
Right. Yeah,
and I'm going to do quests. I'm going to sell items to NPCs. I'm not going to interact with anyone. I'm just going to rack in gold.
Yeah, it's kind of, I guess, like the real world equivalent would be like basically like a job, because you're spending time. You're not like employed, but you're just it's the simple idea of like time, activity, and then time times activity equals reward, like a basic reward. And so that's kind of like having a job. I guess it's the real world equivalent of it. But then on top of that, you can then engage in this whole trading economy. So some of the other terms and tricks, I should say, tools that players will use to increase their in-game wealth. There is an activity called farming. And farming is more closely related to a job to me, because like basically what you're doing is you're saying, hey, there's this one, like on top of the gold that you can just get from killing monsters will sometimes also drop specific items based on the monsters you kill.
You can farm those items.
And you can, quote, farm those items, farming the
killing them repeatedly over and over and over again.
To get those items. Sometimes it's not killing. Sometimes it's, in WoW, you can go gather, there are these little nodes scattered around the map, and you can go gather ore to make, that
so
you
can mine.
Yeah, you
Skyrim's
can mine
got it,
ore.
Fallout's got it.
Yeah, or you can gather herbs, too. Herbs to help make potions and stuff like that. So you can gather, you're just doing a repeated task to amass items. Farming is actually really important to the thriving of an in-game economy. You have to have people who are going out and doing the grunt work so that there's materials. The more materials that are out there that exist within the economy, the more possibility there is for some of these other tricks. So the other
foundation.
Yeah, so on top of farming there is crafting. So crafting is where you then take the materials that you farmed, so it could be skins from
Or
monsters, or it could be
ingots.
ore, and you then craft things out of them. So that's a system that's in the game. So the game does have to have a crafting system.
Yeah.
So in the case of WoW, but I think, like, again, most of MMORPGs have them in some way, shape, or form.
I'm going to make these gauntlets out of iron ingots and leather string.
Exactly.
Or
So
something.
I
And so
have gathered-
you're making a gauntlet that has value.
Right. Yeah, it has value. Yeah, exactly. And you know, you could then just wear those gauntlets and they're yours now. But in most cases, you're going to, or in many cases, you'll be selling them.
Mhm.
So you craft it together. So when you just basically take the materials that you have gathered and crafting, you typically just call that crafting.
Mm-hmm.
There's another term called shuffling, where you go on the auction house and you buy the materials cheap, and
Instead of farming.
instead of farming them yourself. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So you invest 500 gold to buy a bunch of leather to craft a breastplate, but then you sell that breastplate for 2,000 gold.
Right.
So you're making a profit.
Mm-hmm.
So you're making a 1,500 gold profit off of
Because you sold the crafted item to make more money
Exactly.
than
the materials
The farmed,
cost you. Yeah.
right.
So that's called shuffling. That
Mhm.
is a term called shuffling, where you're shuffling a bunch of resources into a item of higher value
Mhm.
because you have the
Sounds
skill.
like real estate.
You've spent the time. Exactly. Yeah. See, it's
I'm
like
going to buy a house cheap, and then I'm going to go in and fix it up with some time and effort
also
and money.
cheap. Yep.
And then I'm going to sell it for a profit over all of it.
Yep. Exactly. Yep. To make up the
Hey,
loss.
that goes right into our next thing called flipping.
Flipping, yep. So flipping is where you're basically you're cutting out the middle portion, though. Instead of crafting it, instead of taking the materials and making something more valuable out of them, you're just selling them for a higher profit. So flipping is
You do nothing to it.
you do
just
nothing.
buy it.
You buy it low and sell it high. There are actually add-ons that will help you. They'll show you how much below quote market value an item is, and you can then, this is 80% below market value. I'm going to buy it, for basically like 80% less of what it's
Right.
worth, and then selling it for
That
100%
poor
of what it's
person
worth.
who is
Yeah.
selling it at 80% loss.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
They just don't even know.
And some people, again, sometimes they either don't know, or sometimes they're just like, I want to get this out of my bags, but I want to make a little bit of gold out of it. There's like reasons people might sell low, but one way or another, someone's just getting rid of it, and then you're just taking those and you're posting them back for a higher value. There's a term called resetting the market. I learned about this recently, where resetting is like you go and buy everything that's lower than the price you want it, and then you then post it at the price you want it and make a huge profit. It's called resetting the market, because then someone's going to come in. The only thing they're going to see is your higher price.
You have to be rich.
You have to be, not only you have to be rich, you have to be careful, because like all it takes is then someone else to come in there, undercut you,
Then reset it back.
and reset, and then you have to
Yeah.
reset it back, because you have to
Yeah.
spend more resetting it back. People actually make a profit off of people trying to reset the market.
Wow.
It's crazy.
This is nuts.
Yeah. Sniping is similar to flipping, except it's with more higher priced items. You're actually specifically, you're using add-ons or something, or you're just paying really close attention to the market, and you're grabbing very, very high value, one-off high value items when people are selling them low. So that could be, again, a really rare sword or something like that, or a mount or something like that you snipe. You're grabbing it again when it's really low, and then you're selling it for an exorbitant profit. But
yeah, and there's eBay snipers too.
Yep.
They'll like wait to the very last second of
Yes.
a bid as it counts down, and you're like, "Yeah, I'm going to get this at $12," and they'll come in right at the last second and outbid you
Yep.
by 2 cents.
Yep.
And they got it for $12.02.
Yep.
And you're done. You lost it. So
Yep.
sniping happens in the real world too.
Yeah, and again, since a lot of these work like eBay as well, sometimes people will grab them when they're grab them. They'll do the same thing. They'll use an add-on to pay attention to when it's close to going up, and then bid on it at the lower bid price than the buyout price.
Yep. And so add-ons you keep talking about really fast. In the World of Warcraft or any MMO really, there's a GUI, and it has all of these access. API is a way programmers can take and make new programs that attach like third party. Like I could make my own program that I would run alongside World of Warcraft that uses the same hooks World of Warcraft has into the auction house and the data transfers to make my own idea. So I'm just taking the same raw data that's available from the game, and I'm making a way of like calculations that I'm adding to it as an add-on to say, okay, this sells most of the time at this by tracking it and keeping my own record of how it normally sells. And then you can go in and you can do this with finances too, with your own budgeting and software and stuff. Like it's equivalent to that. It's like, it's not made by Blizzard. It's not in the WoW GUI. It's something you are smart or someone in the community has provided for free from a third party that allows you to install it and run it.
And unlike we talked the last episode, one of these recent episodes we talked about cheating.
Yep.
It's technically not cheating because WoW allows it.
Yeah,
Like there's like they have
the API is made by Blizzard for you to make the calls into the data to get it.
Exactly. Yeah. The one I use that I recently discovered, because again, part of this, what inspired this entire conversation is I have been trying to, in my effort to want to play WoW Classic without paying any real world money, I've been like getting really involved in the retail WoW economy to try to make some gold so that I can afford WoW tokens. I've already gotten 2.
Nice.
I got one for myself, and I'm giving one to Justin because he bought me Monster Hunter a while back, and I feel beholden to cover his WoW costs to get him to play it with me. So so I got 2.
So am I in line?
2.
So I guess
you
I'm number 3.
Yeah, right, if you want, if you're interested, actually,
dust
I'm
off
coming
that
up.
old right there.
Yeah, I'm coming
figure
up.
out where I can put that in.
Yeah. So anyway, I've been using an add-on. What helped me was I found an add-on. First of all, I found the Reddit. There's a subreddit called WoW Economy, and they really push an add-on. I don't know if they partner, if they've made the add-on, but they really push an add-on called TSM, which stands for Trade Skill Master. This thing's nuts. You have to actually download a client on your desktop separate from the game. You have to run at the same time the game is, and that all that does is it connects to a database that they have and just feeds data to the add-on that then that's a GUI, a graphical user interface in the game, and like it'll show you every item that you collect. It'll show you if it's sellable. It'll show you it'll say the market value, the region, like how much this sells on average in your region, how often it sells, and it's all this data, and then it also goes in and like they have functionality for sniping, which I don't use because I don't care. But the big thing that helps me is it does all the thinking for me. I say, I want you to like post these items at like roughly market value. I want you to do this many stacks of that. Like it goes in and it prices everything for me. So I don't have to go in and compare manually every price and post it. It does all the thinking for me. And just all I have to do is go click, post these things. And it goes post, and shows me how much it's posting for.
Nice.
Calculates like how much money I have on their total. If I were to sell all my auctions right now, I'm probably not going to sell them all. But if I were to sell them all right now, I would have something like 4 million gold.
Jeez.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff I have on there. Some of it was stuff I had just been sitting on for years. Like in my bank and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Some of it's stuff that I've gathered recently, but like, yeah. So anyways, all the stuff we've been talking about thus far has been mostly like dealing with like how like in-game interfaces and how the game, like mostly we've been talking about goods, like the equivalent of goods. We've been talking about the equivalent of raw goods, me giving you a physical item, but in this case it's a digital item.
Right.
There's also services. There's also services we have to deal with. There's also the fact that there are things in the game that I can't do by myself, and I don't want to do by myself, so I could pay others to do that.
Right.
And that's there's a term called boosting.
Yes.
And it's a recent thing, and it's a big hot button issue in the WoW community right now. What boosting is there's a group of players that are like, hey, we can say that it's a 10-man raid. We can do it with 9 of us. And then take someone along with us, and they can die as many times as they want. We can still accomplish the raid.
Right.
What if we just offer to charge that person X amount of gold, and then split the profits 9 ways? So they say, we'll run you through the latest, highest content, get you that rare mount that's only available if you can do the content before the expansion. We'll give you all the items you want, all the items that drop for your class. We'll do that for you. And then
they automatically get all the drops because that's how the game is made.
Do what now? Sorry, what?
They automatically get all the drops because that's how the game is made. Like, if boss drops, you loot the boss. Everything you see is yours. Right? Isn't that how it's instant?
No.
Instant loot? Isn't that how it works now?
No, there's a chance of loot dropping. So what they do is, there's like a system in the game where you can like trade players after, like if it's within a certain amount of time, you can trade the gear to players before it becomes soulbound.
Uh-huh.
But the way that personal loot drops in the game is you kill a boss, you have a chance of getting something. You're not guaranteed to get something.
Right.
But someone in the raid is always guaranteed to get something. So if that something is usable by your class and you have paid to be part of this boosted raid, you'll get it. They will give it to you. They will pass it off to you.
I see.
Yeah. So you boost, basically is the cult boosting because it's going to boost your power significantly.
It's like level grinding
in the game.
Or power leveling.
But you don't actually have to like be a part of the raid to do it.
Right.
Like, you don't have to actually be skilled to do it. You just pay
you just
gold.
show up.
So it's not against the terms of service, but Blizzard is really good in cracking down on people advertising the boosting services in the in-game group finder.
Yeah.
They don't mind if you do it in trade chat. That's what trade chat's for. If you just like post, basically yelling it in the city, hey, we're running this and we're charging this much for it. But if you use their group finder, like there was a problem, and before they were cracking down on it, it was like every group was a boost.
Wow.
Like you couldn't find just a regular group running because it was all boosting. So it's a huge problem in the community.
What if you did just want a regular group? What if I'm just a regular guy and
you
I
have such a hard time finding it? That's why they were cracking down on it.
So I would jump into an instance with 9 other people, and then suddenly in the chat someone's boosting. Like, how does that work? Because it's random. Like, how do you know you're gonna?
Oh no. There's the random group finder, which is always going to just sort you.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as boosting because it's always going to sort you with randos. Okay. There's also pre-made group. There's like, they have an interface now where you can basically post like, hey, we're running this and we're doing this and we want you to have this requirement. Mm-hmm. And that the way it's supposed to function is allow people to come up with their own terms in their own groups.
Okay.
The way people were using it is for boosting. Yeah, exactly. So it became just a tool for boosting. So Blizzard's like, nope, and started cracking down on it. Yeah. And then similar to boosting, but a little different is casinos. And again, this is just, it's just gambling. It's in-game gambling. Basically.
I didn't even know this was a thing.
Yeah.
I thought it was like an in-game slot machine or an in-game poker table where you would play against, quote, the house. Again, talking about the game being the house. No, this is like players getting together and rolling a die.
Basically is what it is, because there's a roll function.
In-game
And it was
currency.
way more popular in like vanilla WoW back before they started cracking down on it, because Blizzard's terms of service is you can run a casino all you like, just don't do it spam trade. Don't spam it within earshot of people. So now the way the gambling works in game, they have add-ons for it now. So you basically like have an add-on, and if other people have that add-on, you can like gamble with them so it's all quiet essentially. But the way it used to work, I remember early in WoW, I gambled a couple times.
Yeah.
I would take my like 2 gold. There would be someone who'd be like, hey, there's a buy-in of 2 gold. And you put your 2 gold in, and then they roll a die, and whoever's closest to the number, like gambling number, you whisper the person, you say, I want this number, and the person closest gets the pot.
Did you win?
No.
Yeah, of course not.
I was like, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to waste my
Nobody
gold.
ever wins, because it's based on the honesty of the player who's hosting, and he's not going to be honest, ever. Like, there's no reason for him to be honest.
Exactly. So, casinos are just, again, they're part of an economy. They will exist wherever an economy exists in one shape or form.
Yeah.
Because people are always going to want to gamble. So, that's the kind of terminology. Games with examples of games that have robust in-game economies. Obviously, World of Warcraft's economy, for better or for worse, it's still happening. So I would say
as long as it exists, it's happening. Yeah. Whether it's good or bad or healthy or not, it's there. It's happening.
And we'll talk about whether I would say it's robust in the sense that there's a lot of transactions going on.
Sure.
Constantly in WoW, for better or for worse.
Would you say that gold is the least valuable asset in that game?
No, I would say gold's one of the most valuable assets in that game.
Interesting.
Just because if you have a lot of gold, you can do a lot. If you have a lot of gold, you can become the highest geared player in the game because you can just boost.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a part of a huge raid guild. You just have to have a good way of making money. And a lot of people make money just purely flipping. Once you get a certain amount of money in that game, you can just, if you're good at it, you can just flip and keep getting richer. Like, it's crazy. You can
there's a 1% kind of analogous to the United States. Yeah. All the money in the country. Get richer, right. And you keep going. There was a mount that had like a portable auction house.
Yes, that's even crazier because instead of having to like take time to go to a city and get, you can just mount up wherever you are and have access to the auction house. So it really is a rich getting richer situation. Yeah. No, I would say gold is one of the, I would say like the 2 things that would like being either one of the top guilds in this on your server.
Yeah.
And being able to run the content at the highest, because then you can just boost to make gold.
Right.
Or being one of the richest players on the server and getting boosted using your gold.
Yeah.
Like, those are the 2. Like, I would say those are the 2 best positions to be.
That's
like,
interesting.
A group of players who are skilled. If you don't have skill, just getting rich.
So the actual game currency, the raw gold, is actually the most valuable as well.
Yeah.
In World of Warcraft.
Yeah, I would say.
I will contrast that with Diablo 2 from the 90s, where the in-game gold, this was worthless. Actually, it meant nothing to anyone because they could get so much of it. It was so available by killing monsters.
And there was
the main
nothing
game,
that you had to do.
And you couldn't buy anything with it.
You didn't have to repair your items, or repairing costs were so minimal.
Yeah.
That it wasn't like a thing.
So the actual people in the game decided that a ring called Stone of Jordan was worth more than gold.
We talked about it.
And in a previous episode, we did bring it up. And so they were exchanging rings for high-value items for weapons. Stones of Jordan. So SOJs, SOJs. SOJs were traded for things like the best bow in the game or the best axe in the game, and the best sword,
if I
Wind
had
Fury, or whatever it's called.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to get SOJs so that I could then.
But that's completely based on the social aspect. It's how much value you put on
Diablo
each
2,
Stones of Jordan.
Diablo 2 was one of the last barter economies I ever...
Pure
barter economies. Like, because if you didn't have Stones of Jordan, if you weren't involved in that, quote, currency exchange, it literally was just like, I've got this really high value item, and you've got this really high value item. Let's exchange them because I want that one. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, really, it was like a pure, like, barter. The last time I think I ever partook of any kind of barter exchanging, which is really crazy. EVE Online is another game that
my gosh,
it's I've heard it described as spreadsheets online. Like, I mean, it's like a spaceship game, like space and planets, and but like it's
you
all about
own
the ships.
and run a ship.
Exactly, it's all about the ships. Like you basically, and then you can exchange ships with other players. So you basically have these players who have entire armadas they own. And
they have war. They fight each other,
ships.
and they have different defenses and attacks and stuff. And there was wars that have taken place where people have lost millions of dollars.
Yeah, and we're not just talking about in-game currency,
like actual money.
The in-game currency correlates to real-world money. The economy is so much at this point that you can basically there's a value on the in-game currency that is comparable to it's real-world money at this point because there's an interface they have to allow you to exchange
real world
money for in-game currency. Therefore, in-game currency, there are ships that are worth, like there was a big thing that happened where someone lost $100,000 worth of ships.
Well, there was the war that lost millions of dollars total in damages.
So it's insane.
Because if a ship gets destroyed, it's gone.
Yep.
Like it's it. It blows up. You've lost your health and shield. It's done. Yep. And in the game, it just doesn't exist anymore. Yep. You can't repair it. You can't bring it back. It's gone.
It's gone, yeah.
And so if you've spent real life time and money on that ship and you've lost it in a war, it's done.
It's a thriving economy, but it's a fragile economy for that exact reason, I would say. Yeah.
That level of entry is way beyond my ability to I'm not doing that. I'm just not doing that.
I researched it a little bit. Path of Exile, which is a kind of like a Diablo game, apparently has like a really good economy.
Is that the free-to-play one?
That's the free-to-play, And you were going to mention free-to-play games.
That's why I asked if it was. So free-to-play games are built entirely on their in-game economy. The only way you can make money on a free-to-play game is just it's all about the economy. It's all about the in-game resources.
Microtransactions.
Right, and microtransactions. So if you've noticed, cell phone games always have some sort of time-gated currency. I'm going to use Dr. Mario World as a new Nintendo one, where you have X amount of hearts per day that you accumulate over time. And once you spend those down, you can use real-world money to buy diamonds to then buy hearts. And it sounds confusing because hearts is a currency, diamonds are a currency, but almost every free-to-play game has some sort of you spend real money to get a certain resource in the game that you can then use to continue playing or to boost or enhance your experience, however you want to do it. And that's how free-to-play works.
Yeah, and games, they're like specifically make things take long enough where they're trying to prey on your impatience and say, but if you just spend a little bit of actual real-world money,
you could boost this.
You can make this
and
faster.
Clash of Clans is a huge example because when you first start, you start building your town and you're upgrading stuff all the time. You're super busy. You're like, yeah, this is great. And things do take time, but it's not enough to stop you from playing.
Yeah.
But then I remember playing for like 6 months. So 6 months into the game, it took a week for one upgrade, for one building. And that was if I had the money to do it, like in-game currency. I never spent a dime on Clash of Clans. It was so bad that I could it took a month to amass the resources to then upgrade something that took a week to upgrade. Yeah. That I couldn't even use or experience the benefits of that upgrade for a week.
Yeah, WoW's not that bad, but like
WoW's not free.
So they also have a lot of systems though. Retail WoW has a lot of systems in place that time gauge you.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, and that's why again I talked about that when I streamed Classic was like the one thing I appreciate about Classic is that game's grindy, but if you just sit there and grind it out for hours, you can achieve the things you want to without being actively blocked.
Okay.
Like they say, you cannot do any more of these quests. Now, you can do as many of those quests as you want in Classic. Again, it takes time.
That's the modern World of Warcraft model shaping
designed
and
after
like
cell
changing.
phones,
Yeah, exactly. As a result of the mobile
free
market
game.
coming
Yep,
in
exactly.
and
It's
the
nuts.
race to the bottom, free to play
Yeah.
games. Yeah.
Yeah. RuneScape, I don't know enough about, but apparently, again, I looked it up, and apparently people talk about RuneScape's economy. I know Ultima Online very, very briefly. I have a friend who plays Ultima Online, but like he was very involved in the economy of Ultima, and I think part of what made Ultima Online's economy thrive is that you could actually buy in-game houses that like other people like could see always constantly. Like you actually like staked out a part of the land of Ultima Online on your server, I guess. So like there was this huge, again, like there was something to strive for, is getting a house and showing it off.
I assume there was a finite amount of land.
I think so, yeah.
In each instance of in your server.
Yeah,
right.
so like, so there was a huge, again, draw. There's a whole economic system surrounding just like getting a house and being able to show that off.
Right. So if the Ultima Online servers had, say, 5 servers, then there's 5 times the landmass to buy from, but that's it. That's the end of it. Whereas like Minecraft, you could always stand up another server.
Exactly.
So there's an infinite amount of land
in
Minecraft, so it's not valuable at all. Supply and demand.
Yep, exactly.
Right.
So I want to spend the last question here. We've talked a lot about how economies like kind of do work, how they're supposed to work, I should say, and how it works when everything's going well. What are some of the pitfalls of in-game economies, and how can they go bad and even ruin games, like completely ruin the experience for players, like when they take a turn for the worse?
This is where some philosophy discussions come into play, and we agree. Well, kind of, maybe, if you are on the side of most people are selfish, if not everyone, in some degree, and so people ruin in-game economies because of malpractice, exploitation, and selfishness and greed.
Yep.
And so those things would wreck economies. And all those add-ons that you say that World of Warcraft uses, some could argue that they ruin the in-game economy because they give people who are nefarious the tools needed to exploit the economy and make money for themselves at the disadvantage of everyone, expense of everyone else. And so that's a thing that's pretty bad.
I'd also say a pitfall of an economy is, like anything, it can become incredibly addictive. I mean, that's what workaholism is essentially, is like I become addicted to making money through my job by doing the thing. I mean, there's some other psychological factors at play, but at the end of the day is like when you're getting rewarded, the pleasure centers in our brain say, "Oh, great, awesome! Like you're doing great. You're providing for us," and that's a good thing generally.
Right.
But just like anything, that good thing can kind of become hijacked by our brains and become a very, 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 very bad thing very fast.
Yeah.
People will tank their entire lives in EVE Online or World of Warcraft, just like spending. I mean, because in WoW there's a gold to dollar exchange as well, so you can actually like spend money in WoW. Real world money in WoW to get these things and engage in the economy, and like all of that can go to naught. So you can actually like, you really can ruin your life. But even if you don't spend real world money, you can still spend tons of time and ruin your relationships, ruin your job prospects, like it can impact your work, all that stuff like there. So people can, we talked about that in the dark side of gaming. We had a whole episode on addiction and stuff like that too.
Yeah.
But it goes beyond just the players. And like there are actual like, I think I mentioned with EVE, in-game economies can be very fragile, and they depend on a lot of things. So I'll go back to my tried and true example of WoW because I'm engaged in that right now. And I'm actually engaged in the economy on a server that I can tell is a bad server to be engaged on the economy with. The server that I've always been played WoW on is a server called Shadow Moon. And it's connected to a couple other servers as well, because they had this whole like server sharing connection thing at one point to lighten the load and make things better. But nevertheless, like the group that I'm in is like, the economy is just in a bad spot right now. I am not, like I said, I've got like 5 million gold worth of items on the auction house right now. I expect maybe 10%. If that, I'll be happy if 10% of that sells.
So why didn't you price it at 10% of its value?
Yeah, because I'm using the because it's hard to describe, because like the things are still, I can still get it at those prices. It's the demand. The demand for those items may not be there. So I don't lower the gold cost. I just keep posting them and hope that the demand someone eventually demands them and buys them at the price they're valued at. Anyways, but like, so part of why I bring it up is why I bring up my server is the fact that part of the reason my server is suffering its economy is because population. My server is known as a server where people kind of like come and go, ebb and flow, usually around the time of content releases.
Yeah.
So we're about to enter like a new, like WoW Classic is about to come out. So a bunch of people are just dumping all their stuff on the auction house trying to make money to buy a WoW token to play WoW for free, like I'm doing. And not a lot of people are buying because they're like, why would I buy a bunch of stuff?
So they're flooding the market.
So they're
Inflation's
flooding the market.
happening. Gold is becoming less valuable.
Exactly. Yeah. So
it's a real world economy.
Yeah, but even things like server transfers, like Blizzard opens up a server transfer from one high population server to a low population server, that's going to have a huge impact on the economy with a bunch of people migrating servers.
Right, because they take all their items with them and then infect the new, quote unquote, the new server with all their high value stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, new content releases, the fact that you can then buy in-game time with real currency, like, will affect an economy. Mm-hmm. Like, because then, like I said, people are going to, like, suddenly the price of gold's going to go up. People are going to, like, the value of gold's going to go up because people are going to use that to want to buy game time so they can enjoy the new content.
Right.
But then there's going to be a slow burn. Then it's going to be worthless for months and months and months and months and months afterwards. Like, so there's just all this, like, there's fluctuation. There's the fact that there's a big controversy because WoW Classic is about to come out, and so people are worried about the WoW Classic servers' economies.
Right.
Because something that's different in 2019 that wasn't around in 2004 is streamers.
Yep.
And someone who's got 100,000 followers who's like, hey, I'm going to be playing WoW Classic at 6 o'clock tonight. Come join me. And then all their followers are going to get on and now you suddenly have an army's worth of people that can do things like, hey, we're all going to post our, we're going to tank the economy today. We're going to we're going to buy everything on the auction house, and just suddenly, like, nothing's going to be available on the auction house for months because we just bought everything off of it, and everyone's going to have to rebuild it back up. Or the contrast is we're suddenly going to, like, go gather a bunch of this herb and then flood the market and just crash that market just for giggles, just to watch what happens and troll, because we're streamers and we need content, we need more views, and we're doing it for the lulz. So like, Blizzard has specifically asked that all streamers go on this one specific server, but they're not going to stay there. They're going to go and they're going to troll, and it's going to be awful. So people are really worried that, like, economies, these virtual economies are fragile because, like you said, they're just digital. They go away. They're not consequential. That's the thing, is there's no real consequences other than time, I would say. Other than time spent, at the end of the day, that's the only thing, the only real world impact that any of these virtual economies have. At the end of the day, if you're the best auction house flipper in the world, the only thing you're gaining is time. You're not spending time to get the things you want. Yeah. So if time's the only factor, then, like, in the real world, if I go screw with the economy, I'm probably going to suffer consequences from the IRS or from, you know what I mean? Like, there's real world consequences for me trying to screw with the economy.
Right. And you have to be a billionaire to do that.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. In games like this, there's not really any consequences. Maybe if you do something really egregious, you might get banned because for violating terms of service, but it has to be a very specific thing. So, yeah. So, I don't know. There's I think that, like, a bad economy in a game can really ruin the experience for players because, like, some of these, like, because the contrast is a really well-working economy, a really robust economy that gets players engaged, can really make a game thrive. It can be a part of a metagame that draws players back into the game.
I've never had any interest in any in-game economy ever.
I've only recently, and that's because I've been engaging with my servers.
I've played WoW for 8 years straight, maybe 12. I don't remember. It's been a long time, but I played WoW since its birth through many, many years later. I played Star Wars: The Old Republic, and I played Final Fantasy 14. I did play a little Star Wars Galaxies. Yeah. I never once thought of the economy.
Apparently,
all I wanted was the quests.
I read about it. Apparently, people really liked Star Wars Galaxies economy. Yeah.
Apparently, it was awesome. But all I cared about was the quests and leveling to max level, and that was it. I just kind of jumped after that. I never got into rating, never got into the economy. I wonder how many gamers are like me out there.
There's probably a lot, but there's also probably a lot of gamers who are
this much.
Because again, it's like, it's a meta economy. Not meta economy, sorry. It's a meta game. I was reading on the WoW economy subreddit, people's philosophy. They call themselves goblins because, in the mythology of World of Warcraft, like, goblins are like these super
money grubbers,
greedy. Yeah,
well, exactly. Harry Potter too.
Right. Yeah. So the goblins will always say, they're like, you know what? Like, it's just another measure of success.
Yep.
It's another number by which you can kind of measure.
Yeah, I've got max
your
gear.
success.
I've done all the content. I've rated everything. I've
got
everything.
This number that's higher.
And I still want to play this game. What else can I do?
Yeah,
It's going to the next thing.
It's not just for prestige, though. It's not just like, so there's also sort of like this idea of like being able to see the progress of like, I've gained this much gold in this amount of time.
Yeah.
I can see my stats, my graphs that, the add-on that I use will show you a graph of how much gold you've earned over the last 7 days or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, it's cool to see those numbers go up and down. It's another number by which to measure success.
Like trophies.
Yeah, exactly like trophies.
I'm in. Let's go.
You're in. You want to make as much gold as possible. You're right. It's another just number that people latch onto and say, this is how I can sort of, get the pleasure reward centers of my brain going.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sitting there like, I can understand it while also being like, yeah, I love it. Like, I love seeing for me, it's the WoW tokens themselves. I'm like, I've got two of them sitting in my bags, just like smiling back at me. And that's, I know that translates into something that has value for me, which is being able to play the game without spending a dime of my real money. Like,
right.
I don't want to spend $15. Some people are like, you'll always see people on these forums that are like, well, you could just get a part-time job, and if WoW tokens are at 150,000 gold per token, if you spend it in reverse, if you say, I'm going to spend real money to buy gold in game, like, you just get a part-time job and you can get this much gold in, a week or whatever. Right. But people, again, the goblins will respond like, that's not the point. The point is for people like me who are like, I want to play to play, not pay to play.
Yeah.
I want to play the game and be able to continue to play the game.
Right.
I don't want to keep spending a $15 subscription fee. I spent so much $15 subscription fees before WoW tokens came out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm done with it. I want to just,
total all that up and tell us how much you've actually spent.
I'm not going to do it.
15 times 12.
Yeah,
how much is that?
Anyway, so I've rambled. This part
math.
of this game.
I'm gonna embarrass Penguin.
This
probably just edit it out.
I don't know how much. I don't know how much I played concurrently.
Each year is $180, not including how much it costs to buy the actual games. Each expansion is usually 40 to 60. The initial game was 60, and there's like
I will
8
say
expansions.
I'm going to estimate because I don't want to do the math right now on the air, but I will estimate I've spent probably $500.
Oh, I'd say that's a low ball.
Yeah, that's a low ball.
That's a low ball. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't want to spend any more if I don't have to. So, especially with Classic coming out, I just want to play the game and enjoy it. So, anyways, yeah, part of this episode went long because of me. So, my bad. I rambled a lot, but
I'd be okay with the entire hour and 20 minutes we have.
Oh, I'm sure you would.
In any of it. Just throw it all up there.
So yeah, that's virtual economies. That's how they work. That's some of the ins and outs and intricacies of them. I think they're fascinating. I think that there's so much going on, like from a game design perspective, and then also a human to human interaction perspective, that they're just fascinating. They're super complicated.
One can be very controlled and one cannot.
More than we can, exactly. More than we can cover in even just an hour and 20 minutes. So, we want to hear your thoughts. We want to hear what your opinions are on virtual economies, whether if you've engaged in them before, if you think that they're insane and someone would be nuts to waste their time and money on that. Those are kind of two extremes. Mm-hmm. We want to hear what your thoughts are, and we want to hear if you've ever partaken in an in-game economy or an in-game exchange of some way, shape, or form. And hear what your thoughts are. So
you can find us more recently and newer. We have a Discord that we've had for a while and never really advertised it. So from now on, there will be a link in every single episode of this podcast in the description that will take you to our Discord server. It is an invite link that never expires. You can thank Gangstar, who is a member of our server, who jumped in to help us, who gave us a bunch of tips and tidbits on how to boost our Discord server. We have now different channels for which you guys can interact with each other on different topics.
We can see you. Here's the cool thing about Discord that I'm going to have to learn how to use, but you can engage with us live because we'll always see messages on our Discord server. They will alert to our phone. So it's kind of like Reddit, but live.
Right.
So if you want to engage with us and say, like, I literally want to hear your thoughts on this thing that I just listened to, like, you can do it. We've got channels for video games, just talking about general games you're playing, games you like. We've got a channel for recent episodes. If you want to specifically talk about what we talked about in an episode, you can go to that channel. And we've got different sub channels for RPGs, fighting games, all kinds of stuff. We'll if you think there should be a channel for other things, we can totally post that and make that a reality. So it's a new thing. We're very excited about it. So go check out our Discord.
We're eventually going to tie this to some sort of membership thing, so you guys could be members of our Discord server and have more privileges than regular run-of-the-mill public. We can have admins, managers, and so this is just the beginning of all of that. So right now everyone's kind of lumped into the same pool of people, with me and Penguin being the admins. But eventually it gives us the ability to allow you guys to have more kind of privileged rights if you were more dedicated fans.
Yeah.
And better listeners, quote unquote. Better.
Yeah.
Every listener's amazing.
Yeah.
So thank you for your listen.
Exactly. If you're not into Discord and want to engage with us on other social medias,
you can find us at 80bitpodsmash.com. It's our landing website where we have links to Google Play, iTunes, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and Spotify, and every link you can think of. Like I mentioned earlier, our social media links. We have a subreddit, 80bitpodsmash. You can tweet at us or Instagram tag us at 80bitpodsmash. That's 80BIT Podsmash. We are everywhere we think that we want to be. If you want us somewhere we are not, let us know, and we'll put ourselves there.
Nice. Did you do the... Yeah, you did it all. All right, cool. Next week is the release of the week. The next... Yeah, whatever. The next week that you'll listen to this will be the release of Borderlands, so we're going to do...
Borderlands 3 week.
We're going to do...
It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, we're going to do an everything Borderlands, get it all out of our system. So
yes.
I know you've been hearing bits and pieces from us about the development of Borderlands 3 and the various controversies and everything, about Borderlands 3, but we're going to go back. We're going to talk about Borderlands 1 through pre-sequel, 1 through Tales, if you've played it.
I haven't.
So we're going to do it like we do with all of our episodes. We're going to talk about our favorites, favorite characters, favorite games, all that stuff. We're going to do all of that, and it's going to be a blast. So we're going to get all the Borderlands out of our system, so you have that to look forward to next week.
All right. See you next week.